You're listening to the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Taunya Lowe, a podcast of curated conversations with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development. Get ready for inspiring interviews, educational lessons, and thought-provoking discussions that will challenge you to execute something new and innovative that will drive results in your organization. And now, here's Dr. Taunya Lowe.
Hello, you're listening to episode 003 of the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Taunya Lowe. In 2019, I released my book, Results Driven Organizations, The 4 Keys for a High-Performance Workplace. This podcast is designed to expand the conversation with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development and what it really takes to create, develop, and maintain results-driven organizations and higher-performing teams and communities. Our guest today is Roxy Ndebumadu. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Our guest today is Roxy Ndebumadu. Roxy is a fighter and survivor, a woman defined by resilience, ambition, and life experiences, which taught her to persevere through adversity. An award-winning trailblazer who drives inspiration, leads innovation, and cultivates communities. In November of 2019, Roxy made history by being the youngest woman elected to serve as Bowie City Councilwoman and the first African-American woman to represent District 4 within the state of Maryland. A graduate of Howard University with a focus on health sciences, her career took a sudden U-turn due to a desire to help tackle technology infrastructure issues in Nigeria and rural areas for underprivileged minorities. She landed at Microsoft. She defies critics and breaks through glass ceilings at Microsoft every day. She is currently a federal Custome Success Lead, where she's tasked with leading a team of technical advisors, transforming and cultivating Microsoft's customer relationships, identifying and connecting with internal and external stakeholders. She is a trailblazer. And so with that, Roxy, welcome to RDO.
Dr. Lowe, oh my goodness, I am so excited to be here with you. And that intro, can you just intro me every day at work? That would be great. Thank you.
We all need somebody to just kind of, play our music and intro us when we walk into a room, right?
Yes, we do. And just roll out the music. This girl is on fire. That would be great.
And that would be your theme music. That would truly be your theme music. So
thank you.
Roxy, I've shared your brief bio, but I would love for you to tell our listeners about your journey to where you are today, from, Microsoft to councilwoman to, you didn't just wake up in these positions. And I think oftentimes when people see CEOs or they see people in leadership, they don't see the journey. So would you share your journey with us?
Absolutely. First off, I want to say, Dr. Lowe, thank you so much for having me today. I am so thrilled to be here with you. The work that you're doing is absolutely amazing. And for your listeners who are inspired, who are leading large tier organizations, and who are really inspiring innovation and transformation, this is so helpful for them. So I just want to thank you for all of the work that you're doing, first off. Now, my journey and how I got to these different positions, wow, it has been a long road. I will be honest with you. It's been a very long and interesting journey. But when I look back, I feel like every moment and every piece of adversity that I have faced and that has been thrown my way has prepped me for the very next step, for something else that was coming. It started out between me growing up in Nigeria and the US, with both of my family being, well, most of my family being based in the Nigerian area, as well as them being based in Europe, I spent a lot of time going back and forth as a child. And so I would take my studies and go over to Nigeria for long periods of a time and really just spend time immersed in the culture, immersed in the villages where there's like no active running water all the time, where the electricity and the energy is being taken at a moment's notice. And if you don't have a generator, that means you're sitting in dark all the time, where there is lack of internet access, lack of broadband, lack of infrastructure. So that was my experience for a really, really long time. Both of my parents weren't really in the picture because my father just wasn't around. And my mother, she was really focused on trying to provide, trying to be the best mother that she possibly could. That left me with a lot of days and a lot of nights alone. And I highlight that story because I think it's what's made me who I am. And I think it's given me the heart that I have and inspired the level of compassion that I have for other people and the business and my work and the things that I've set out to accomplish in my life. Leading up to most of these moments, I went to college at Howard University. I graduated from Howard with a degree in nursing and healthcare sciences because in that moment, I knew that I was primed and prepped to tackle a lot of the prevalent diseases that were in minority communities, because that's where my grandparents passed away from, prevalent diseases that attack minorities at a higher rate than they do any other ethnicity. After graduating, I said, well, Roxy, this is not the challenge for you to solve. This isn't going to be your one. I was more driven by my frustration with infrastructure. So I decided, well, why don't you go into technology? At that time, there were very few rooms with Black women. There were very few rooms with young women. There were very few rooms with women in general. And so I said, okay, cool. That's where you're going to go. You're going to go there and you're going to take up space and you're going to shake it up. And you're going to help Microsoft's most largest and strategic customers change the way that they think around providing access and providing opportunity and providing resources to be able to do your job in the best possible way. You're going to go there and change the way that they think so that they can do it for the better for their community and for their customers. I landed at Microsoft with that mentality. After that, I said, you know what? This is not enough. I love this. It's driving me. It's fueling me, but I need to do more. I had made a significant promise to the little girl inside of me many years ago that said I would always be the advocate that I wish I had. So I ran for office in that moment. I didn't think I was going to win. I thought I was just going to jump into it, learn a few, be a little loud,
get your feet wet,
get my feet wet. And that night, I was standing outside of the door waiting to hear the election results. And the reporter was standing right next to me. It was 3 a.m. in the morning. And she said, Roxy, how does it feel to be the winner? And I said, the what? How does it feel to be the councilwoman representative? And I was like, I literally just screamed. And the only thing I said was, Mama, we made it. And that's literally all I was doing. But that whole upbringing, that story that I shared in the beginning, that's what drove my love for advocacy, my desire to be there for other people, my desire to shake up rooms that were not colorful enough, my desire to push things forward on the brink of innovation, because in Africa, I saw what it looked like to have lack of access, lack of opportunity, lack of resources. So that childhood experience and that story drove a lot of that, of how I do my day job at Microsoft and how I do my night job as a councilwoman.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I mean, I'm a true believer that the challenges that we face prepare us for something bigger and better, where we get an opportunity to shine and we get an opportunity to serve. And so I love how you decided, wait a minute, I need to be doing something more, something different. Yeah. I need to be making a difference. And so congratulations to you again on that win. Was politics, was that something, did you always see yourself in politics, or was it just that conversation that you were having with yourself that I'm going to dip my foot in and see what happens?
I never saw myself in politics, to be honest with you. My mentor at Microsoft, his name is Fred Humphreys. He's the corporate vice president of government affairs, said to me one day during breakfast, actually, we used to have these breakfast meetings before COVID. He said, Roxy, you always have something to say. You're always in a room and you're always advocating for someone. So why don't you go run for office? That will give you the platform that you need to do that at the scale that you're destined for. And I said, you know what, Fred, from your lips to God's ears, I'm on my way. And I registered to run 4 days after that.
And she takes action.
Yes.
I love it. She takes action. Did you do it shaking in your boots?
Oh, yes. I'm one of those people that knows I'm usually terrified at most of the things that I do.
Yeah.
When I speak up or if I post something on LinkedIn I know it's a little rocky, I have like one eye closed and I like, very far from the keyboard and I just hit send and walk away. I'm one of those people. I'm usually terrified, but I just do it anyways, because how else are you going to face your fears?
Right. Yeah. We have to do it shaking in our boots if we must.
Yes.
And especially as women and especially as minority women, we have to speak up. And when we speak up, we make it, people see us, people are always watching. And so it makes it easier for other women to speak up and the little girls who are coming behind us to speak up and know that they have a voice, and we all have a voice and we must use our voice. So I love that. So Roxy, who are 3 people who have helped you grow as a leader, and what are the lessons that you learned from them that you implement today?
3 people that have helped me grow as a leader. And I did not prep for this question. I was scrambling, thinking like, who are they? So there are 3 people I'm going to highlight. One person is Jean-Philippe Courtois. He is the executive vice president of global sales, marketing, and operations at Microsoft. I am actually his reverse mentor. So he has taught me a lot about empathy, courage, and action, just being a fearless leader, speaking your mind, trailing through adversity, and really being patient and resilient in the outcome. He is amazing. He has been one of the leaders that has been with Microsoft for so many years, and to watch the way that he leads his organizations and to have those conversations with him where you never know what the outcome is going to be. You never know what his response is going to be. But what you do know is that you are appreciated and what you bring to the table is valuable, and that he never feels too big or too small to listen. So he's taught me a lot about that patience and that showing up and just really making space for people to hear them. The second person is Michael Steele. Michael Steele, as many of you know, is the former RNC chairman and the first African-American lieutenant governor of the state of Maryland. Michael has been a mentor to me for a couple of months now. And what Michael has taught me is that it is okay to be authentic. It is okay to disagree with people. And it's okay to be comfortable in who you are and know that there are going to be some people out there that may not like your decisions and may not like your positions. But as long as you can have a conversation and walk them through your thought process, that's all that matters. Mm-hmm. So like you can't look back and you can't focus on the naysayers and you can't focus on the people who don't agree with you and the people who have something to say all the time. All you can do is make room for their thoughts, make room for their opinions, and make room for the dialogue. And that's all that matters. Right, and so that's what Michael Steele has taught me. The last person is Kathleen Riley. Kathleen Riley Christine. Sorry, I'm thinking about another person. But Christine Riley, she is a prominent lawyer in the California area. I met Christine when I was in college when I met her. I was working at a hotel and she was one of the guests that checked in. And we were just talking. At that time, I wanted to go to law school. Look, I've had many lives. I wanted to go to law school. I had just applied to law school and I did withdraw my law school application when I got my job at Microsoft. And I was walking her to her room. We were just talking. I was so excited because remember, this is somebody, and I'm referring to myself, who grew up without parental guidance and someone to teach them what success looks like and how to get there. So every time I met somebody, I was like giddy. I was like, oh my gosh, hi, like, let me tell you all about me. And I want to know about you. So as I walked her to her room to check her in, because I was a butler throughout college, I worked full time. Christine said to me, Roxy, there's a special light about you and you don't know it yet, but you will. And over the years, it will begin to become more apparent to you. So I want you to be fearless in anything that you do and understand that there is a seat for you at the table. Even if it may not look like there's a seat for you at the table, your gifts will make room for you. So keep going. Mm-hmm. And what she taught me was that as a leader, I needed to own that. Even if there were rooms that were black and white, I needed to go into those rooms and make sure that there was color, make sure there was color in perspective, in ethnicity, in gender, in everything. Like I just needed to go there and continue to take my gifts and not worry so much about where I am today, but focus more on where it is that I think I'm going and continue to make steps towards that. And that's so prominent in leadership. It's important.
It is very important. And are you still connected with these 3 people today?
I am. Jean-Philippe, I just sent him an email last night. Michael Steele, I spoke to him on the phone yesterday. We did a room on Clubhouse a couple of days ago. And Christine, I was just texting her last month. I am very adamant on keeping up with my connections.
Yes. Well, it sounds like they have really, I love what Christine said about your light, because I believe that oftentimes women who operate in male-dominated spaces, they struggle with their light. And so I believe that all women, should turn their light on high beam and never turn it off, because we have a voice, we have something to say, and we're leaders, right? Yeah. We should be not allowed, because that means that we're asking for permission. We are leaders, and we should go in and demand to be heard, right?
Exactly.
And to share our thoughts and our contributions to any space that we're in, because we make a difference. So in that same vein around leadership, Roxy, my biggest leadership challenge when I was in corporate or in government was truly embracing the team concept. I'd always been a team of one, and I loved it. But the reality is you can't run an organization or a department with that type of mindset. So can you tell us about your biggest leadership challenge, how you identified it, how you conquered it, and how you teach it today?
That is such a beautiful question. I think my biggest challenge is basically the dynamics in which people receive each other and interact with each other. Because this even goes far back before a virtual world, because I think this dynamic still was prevalent when we were all in person. The dynamics, when you have a team, there are so many different types of personalities, so many different types of people coming from multiple different backgrounds that you're now meshing together. And oftentimes what ends up happening is people assume the intent of other people, depending on the way their communication style lands or the way that they deliver information. And so sometimes that can result in a lot of misintention, a lot of misunderstanding, or this defense mechanism of every man for themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's what it breeds within a team. I've identified that because it's happened to me a lot, in the sense of, maybe that's a misunderstanding. Maybe that's not understanding energies and frequencies. Maybe that's, oh, she's too confident, or, oh, she's too outspoken. Oh, maybe she needs to calm it down.
And turn it down a little bit.
Just turn it down. Just, maybe dial the clock back a little, and it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous, because what people forget to realize is that we are all humans of our own experiences, and the way that we have been raised, and the things that we have seen in our lives, and the things that we have transcended through. And so because we don't always make that space for one another by including grace or understanding where that person is coming from, we oftentimes misunderstand the intent or the actual notion around other people. And I find that it is easier for us to make up an ideology about a person in our head as opposed to having those tough, vulnerable, and brave conversations to really understand and cultivate a dynamic. Now, what I've learned as a leader is one very important thing that I think a lot of people don't think about. People can only meet you as deeply as they have met themselves. Everybody has met themselves to a certain degree, and oftentimes it will not always be to the same. And so sometimes when we're connecting with people, when someone sends me an email and they include those, as I've stated before, per my last email, or all of those things that could be misunderstanding or the tone may be misinterpreted, yes, I take a step back and provide that person grace and say, okay, Roxy, let's think about the way that you receive this, but let's take a step back and remove yourself from this experience and think about what that person may be going through, what they may be used to, what communication style has been expressed and used with them, what they have learned throughout their life, what they might be struggling to unlearn. Like, let's think about all of those variables and now create spaces for your team to really have those tough conversations that are centered around values and vulnerability so that people can really go on this journey of learning and exploring each other and embracing empathy together so that we can create a team that understands each other, a team that's bonded, a team that is on a deeper level so that when certain things happen, we don't create these narratives about people and around people in our head. I think that's what Microsoft has done for me. Microsoft has taught me as a company that in order for us to empower each person on the planet to achieve more, we have to be able to empower ourselves and empower our teams. But that starts from basic connection and basic communication. And if that's not there, how will I, as a leader, be able to empower anybody who may not understand me, who may not understand my communication style, or who may not feel like they belong on the team?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack there. So, communication. Communication. Yeah. When I go into companies to help them kind of work through their challenges, it always comes back to communication, whether it's toxic communication or people don't feel comfortable communicating or they don't feel like they belong. And so I think creating these safe spaces, if you will, spaces where it's safe to be vulnerable, it's safe to let me not assume, let me not assume about you. Let me talk to you and have a conversation with you, which I believe is such a lost art. And you said it earlier, people assume the intent of other people, and we can't do that. We can't do that. And I think we've made it the fallback, right? And so instead of taking that step back, breathing for a minute, and saying, okay, I know how I'm receiving it, and I'm receiving it this way because of this. This person doesn't even know what happened. So surely that's not what's happening. Or they sent it to me because, like you said, their past experiences or things that they've encountered before. And so I think instead of just automatically making assumptions about people, we have to create these opportunities to communicate, to understand one another, to learn about each other, because those are the things that will compromise an organization. Those are the things that stand in the way of organizational success and organizational results. And so I love everything about that. So you're a congresswoman. I keep elevating you. You're a councilwoman.
Thank you for the promotion. I appreciate you.
I see that in your future. Thank you. You are a councilwoman, a position of service.
Yeah.
You are responsible for customer relationships at Microsoft. how do you create the know, like, and trust factor with your internal and your external customers and your constituents? How do you create that? And I ask that question because I believe that we are so beyond customer service that people want an experience. They want a customer experience. And so, how do we create that? How do we create that and give our internal and our external customers that feeling? So, how do you create the know, like, and trust factor with your internal and external constituents? And how do you teach your teach your teams how to replicate that as well?
I'm going to start off by telling you one thing that people take for granted, and that will also lead into my answer.
Okay.
One thing that people take for granted who are in a customer service or customer success or customer facing business or public service, it's all within the same arena. One thing that they take advantage is their proximity to people.
Mm.
When you have a certain level of proximity to people, that gives you the ability to understand people at their bare bone and their core in terms of what drives them, what motivates them, what makes them tick, what they like to see. And you talked about it so beautifully in terms of experiences. People want an experience. People want to feel heard. People want to know that you see them in any environment, whether that's a customer, whether that's a colleague, whether that's a constituent. They want to know that you understand them. And even if you don't fully understand them, that you are going to make an effort to see them and create a space for them to feel comfortable, to enjoy the experience of interacting with you, because when they do interact with you, they know that their problems will be solved or they will get closer towards a solution. And so that's the most important thing. When we have that proximity to people, it gives us those insights. It gives us the ability to pay attention and get beyond the surface to really understand what are the core issues of society that are really driving these emotions and driving these feelings of how people are starting to feel in terms of the customer service experience. So one thing that I like to practice and one thing that I like to coach my teams on is to really pay attention to the way that we communicate and the way that we interact with our customers to make sure that not only are we delivering impeccable service and like low response times and all of that kind of stuff, but you're being authentic to the brand. You're being authentic to you. You're giving people the authentic experience of you when they're interacting with you, because that's something that cannot be replicated company to company. You can't teach authenticity. It's just not something like you either have it and you either encourage people to use what they have within and bring that out of them so that they are encouraged to create this environment, create this interconnectivity, if you will, with themselves and the customer to be able to really, really get beyond the issue and really not just hear them, but actually listen to them to be able to solve the problems. I think far too often we get into this space where we're hearing people, and because we're so quick to deliver, we end up missing everything that the person actually said because we didn't listen. We didn't
Actually,
listen.
what they want. It's like you missed it.
It just goes over the head like shoot.
Yeah.
And the person is sitting there like, did you even hear what I said? Like, are we talking to because people want to make sure that you're listening. So one thing that we like to practice on the city side, as well as on the Microsoft side, we like to really deeply listen to people. After they're done explaining, after they're done, take a moment to pause and then repeat to them exactly what your interpretation of what you heard is, and then start brainstorming, including them in the solution, brainstorming with them and suggesting ideas in terms of how you might go about solving this issue or solving the problem. And sometimes it's not always about solving either. Sometimes it's just about listening, and sometimes it's just making sure that people feel heard, and that's enough. Sometimes they just want to make sure that you understand their problem. And while they understand there may not be a solution, they know that this experience of you being on their side, you hearing them, that they might even have the answer the entire time, and they might be able to solve the problem themselves. But because you provided the space for them to air out and walk through that process by saying it out loud, by sharing it with you, by being invited into your world and your space, and you took yourself aside and made room for them, that they were now able to inspire those ideas and those juices that were flowing in them the entire time. And so we listen first, we pause, we repeat what we heard, and then we go into this conversation, this environment of, this is how I'm thinking. Tell me how you're thinking. So it goes into a flow and exchange of ideas, as opposed to, I am Microsoft, or I am the city of Bowie. I have the answers. This is the answer. Problem solved. Have a blessed day.
Right.
That's not it. We can't do that anymore. That's old customer service. That's not this new arena of customer service anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. People want to be heard. They want to be seen. Do you feel what I'm going through? And which goes back to our conversation a little bit earlier about, communication. The biggest part of communication is listening, like honestly listening to each other, not listening to respond, not listening to jump in like double dutch. It's wait a minute, I want to hear everything, because when I'm listening to respond, I'm going to miss what you're saying. And like you said, it's going to fly over my head. And so that happens so often in organizations, in relationships, on teams. And it really, I believe, affects the customer experience. It's internal and external. And I talk about internal customers in my book because people, when you're in an organization, there are people in other departments that you serve. And so what are those relationships like? Those are, they can become barriers if communication isn't strong in those areas. And so I often ask people about, what customer experiences are you creating internally and externally?
Yes.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah. Roxy, what do you believe are the biggest challenges leaders face right now?
Oh, my goodness. I think the biggest challenge that most leaders face are two things. It's a society that's currently divided to a certain degree. It's divided in the sense that there are people who do not feel safe sharing their ideas. There are people who do not feel safe sharing their voice. And that is causing division because they're fearful that they'll be judged. They're fearful that because the world is so polarized at the moment, that they will not be accepted, they will not be welcomed, and there will be no conversation or no mutual exchange of, this is how I feel and let me explain to you why. This is how I perceive that and let me explain to you why. So they're fearful. And because they're fearful, it creates this defense mechanism that they're always in defense mode. So it kills the interaction, no matter what they're doing, internally or externally, it kills the interaction, because a person that is in survival mode is a person that doesn't feel comfortable. It's a person that doesn't feel like they belong. And it's a person who feels like they are potentially on their way to their wit's end, and they will result to the actions that are not at the forefront. So that's one. The second part is equity. There isn't a lot of equitable opportunity today. So leaders face this problem of shutting people out, not elevating and uplifting people equally, and not providing access to resources or sponsorship for those who have never got it. And so it creates, again, a divided nation, and feeds into this bigger divide where you have one group of people or multiple groups of people who feel like they're underrepresented, who feel like they're unheard, who feel like they're never seen.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening with that is that they then result to the extreme. They then go to these lengths to be heard, to be seen, and to make sure that they're holding people accountable in ways that they might not have thought of in the beginning to get the outcomes that they deserve and that they want.
Right.
And I think that a lot of leaders have not begun to understand the cusp of that problem. They look at it and say, well, let's just pay them more. And we all know with these upcoming generations, Gen Z and millennials, it's not about the money.
It's not about the money.
Not about the money.
If they read the research, they'll know what they want.
And 100%, Dr. Lowe. And for all of those leaders listening, if you didn't know, let me tell you today, it's not about the money. Mm-hmm. It's really not. You have a generation that's shifting, that all they care about is solving the world's problems or solving their own problems. Mm-hmm. So in that factor and in that equation, money doesn't play a factor. Money isn't at the forefront of the ideas because of the simple fact that they want to create the world that they want to live in. Yeah. And currently today, that world doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of leaders are challenged because they don't understand that. They don't. And if they don't understand that, there's two sides to that. One side doesn't understand and one side doesn't think it's that serious yet.
Yeah.
And because they don't think it's that serious yet, what ends up happening? The same thing that happens every single time. Something happens and they respond when it's too late.
Yeah.
And all they end up doing is booming the risk management industry, because then you have a situation where you're hiring all these risk consultants to come in and solve problems that have always been problems that you either just didn't recognize or that you thought weren't as serious.
You didn't want to deal with it when it was, when it was just a flame, a small little, candle flame. Now it's a full forest fire and you're calling in the troops when, which it goes back to everything that we've been talking about. If you just listen and really honestly hear what people are saying and how they're feeling. But it also goes back to you've got to care about people.
Oh, you have to.
You have to care about people.
But there's one gap that I see to that point that you just brought up. There's one gap that I see that is even the most dangerous. I think this is very true for leaders. I see it a lot and it's very disappointing. And I asked my team, if I ever become this way, I need you to check me. You are empowered to do that. Mm-hmm. A lot of leaders cultivate this space and this environment around their support staff, that they arm and equip themselves with a group of yes men who will never feel comfortable either going out to the field, to the ground where the employees are, where the information is, and finding that information and bringing it back up because they want to shield them from it. Mm-hmm. They want to hoarder the access. They want to make sure that this leader doesn't know what's going on because they're either shielding them or they don't want to create more work for themselves, or they don't think it's important enough because they've armored themselves with a group of yes men. They don't armor themselves with people who are going to incite thought-provoking discussions and push back on them. And that is dangerous.
Yeah, it is. It is. Because you can't say, when you're a leader, you can't say, well, I didn't know. I wasn't aware of that. It's your job to know.
It is.
It's your job to know. And you're so right. When you surround yourself with yes people, or as you were saying that, I was thinking about an organization I was working with, and they would always say, well, we want to keep this away, or we didn't want the director to know. And, it's too late now, the crap is already hitting the fan. Yep. And the director is like, why am I just finding out about this? And the issue's been going on, because they wanted to feel like I can control it, I can handle it, right, not knowing that this situation is so much bigger than you. But the other side of it is the culture of that organization did not create that safety where, hey, I can come to you and say, this is what's going on and it's going to blow up soon and let's troubleshoot it. And so they were always in that cycle of putting out major fires that didn't have to be fires.
Yes.
So, absolutely, absolutely. A divided society and equity. And, I think there's so much conversation going on right now around diversity, equity, inclusion, and what does that look like? And people really not being defensive about it, but really coming to the table to understand our similarities and differences of all people in your organization, of all backgrounds, of all ethnicities, of all disabilities, and the whole gamut of differences. So that makes for an amazing organization where people want to come to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh my God.
People have to be in an environment where they enjoy coming, or you're not going to get the best out of them.
Yes. Yes. And not just some people, but all people.
All people.
Yeah. Because it's the people that feel like, well, wow, this is a great organization and I don't experience that. Well, yeah, but what about everybody else?
Exactly.
What about everybody else?
Spot on.
Oh my God, Roxy, I could talk to you all day. So final question, What are you reading that we should be reading?
Oh my gosh, what am I reading? Yes, this is a really great question. Let me tell you right this second. Where's that book at? I'm like...
And you're probably like me. You're probably reading several things at once or listening to several things at once.
Oh my gosh, I am. So there are two main books that I'm reading right now.
Okay.
Two main books that I'm reading. One book is No Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. Ooh. So this talks all about how Reed Hastings and Erin Meyer reinvented the culture of Netflix. And it really gets people to take a look at bureaucracy and why bureaucracy is one of the number one killing factors of an organization and how much it hinders and suppresses creativity. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what that book talks about. The second book that I'm reading, which is a really, really, really good book, it's called Thinking in Systems by Donella H. Meadows. And what's so beautiful about this book is it explains how deeply we think in such siloed mechanisms. Like it talks about some of the biggest problems that are facing the world, like war, poverty, environmental degradation. Like it talks about so much and how all of these problems cannot be solved by just one piece or in isolation with each other. And it talks about how there's such a bigger picture there, but sometimes we're so narrow in our thinking process. Like we get into this systematical way of thinking where it's like 1 + 1 = 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, where we don't think about the holistic realm of the problem and the solution. And it relates that to computers and equations and how people develop the system thinkings and how we as leaders can reinvent that for the 21st centuries. So it's a beautiful book.
Oh, well, I'm going to make sure that our listeners grab it. We've been chatting with Roxy Ndebumadu, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Roxy is Bowie, Maryland Councilwoman of District 4 and leader for Microsoft. So visit the show notes to see how to connect with Roxy, and be sure to grab a copy of the Results-Driven Organizations, the 4 Keys to a High-Performance Workplace. Use the link in the show notes, as well as a link to the books that Roxy mentioned. And be sure to grab our special gift to go along with the book at freegiftfromtaunya.com. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Taunya Lowe. Be sure to review the show notes for the resources mentioned, and don't forget to grab your free gift available at freegiftfromtaunya.com. Until next time.